And welcome to Let 'Em Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo, and we have a great live show for you today. Thanks a lot for joining us, Shannon Taylor, who usually does the show at 7. We're old friends. We've done shows together many times over the years, so it was a great opportunity to have Shannon on and chat and catch up on a lot of things that we've been both interested in. And I don't know where to start. I guess let's start with the fact that we went to the 102nd birthday of Professor Irwin Corey.
Yes.
All right, at his home, his beautiful home in that beautiful location, Shivered Court, right? I guess it's all right to say. I don't think his fans are going to rush to the gate and bust down the gate to get his autograph or things like that.
An iron gate.
Iron gates.
7 feet high.
Right, they are.
Sniffing Court.
Sniffing Court. Is that called Shivered Court? Sniffing Court.
Sniffing Court. Used to be a carriage entranceway for the Stuyvesant entourage way back when.
And the Stuyvesant family.
And then someone else later on, and now it's 2 rows of townhouses behind the gate.
Right, it's hidden away right by the entrance to the Midtown Tunnel, and unless you know where you're going, you can't find it. It's hard. You walk right by it back and forth like 10 times before I found out which gate it was.
Even if you know where you're going.
It's hard to find it, right? Yes. And inside are carriage houses, and each one's beautiful, like a house, really.
And a theater is on the corner.
Okay.
And the theater that took one of the townhouses and built itself up.
Okay.
And one day, the theater had a play, and I wanted to go with the professor and his son Richard, who's as amazing as his father, and takes wonderful care of him. And the theater said, you cannot come in to our gala unless you're in black tie and hot top hat and so on. So we went immediately next door to his townhouse, and we put on the professor's uniform on him. And nobody recognized before we got seated in time, and all of a sudden everybody started squirming in their seats when they realized what we had pulled over on them.
Right, you got in there. Well, tell people like who I don't know. There might be 2 people in the world in the listening area of this show who don't know who Professor Irwin Corey is. So let's tell people who he is. He's the... Go ahead. You know him better than I do, and I know him pretty well.
You're going to get a laugh at this. The Bernie Sanders campaign called Irwin Corey the Bernie Sanders of the entertainment community. Does it fit?
It fits perfectly, right? I'll never forget him on with the founder of CNN, a rabid right-wing conservative who is here, and so is Irwin Corey. And Irwin Corey and him and this old gen from the 50s rehashing the 50s and the Rosenbergs and all that, and Professor Corey screaming, "It's not a crime to be a communist. It's not a crime. It's not illegal to be a communist." Right?
He was a rabid conservative. He was the founder of the news of CNN.
Right.
And it's the show that you put on.
Right. It's a great show.
And it became part of the Fran and Irwin special on PBS.
Oh, really? Great. I'm glad
that you have still not seen, Paul.
I haven't seen it yet. When am I going to see it?
Well, come on over and watch it.
Okay, invite me over.
The producer of it managed to give Irwin 1 copy.
No, that's it. That's why there's no copies kicking around. I got to see it. All right, great. Well, Let Them Talk. And with Joni Musi at that time was helping me do the show, and we were. We had Professor Corey on for his 100th birthday. We have a call. Let the call come in. All right. Oh, this is in the wrong direction. Oh, it's okay now. Okay, great. All right. So, call. You're on the air. I think there's a caller. I don't know if there is or not. Oh, no, there isn't. Okay, so we'll wait for a call. By the way, we are taking calls. The number's on the screen, 212-757-1541. Folks should call in and ask us any question they want. We'll take it. We'll take it on the chin, I'm sure. So again, Shannon Taylor. All right, great. So Professor Corey. So I went to Professor Corey's 102nd birthday party. We celebrated his 100th birthday on this show. We celebrated his 98th birthday on this show. We talked about his history and his life and his fascinating life. 100 years in the entertainment world.
And he lived to see Cuba. This is a guy who went to meet Castro with his son in each decade.
Right.
And was honored.
I'm just curious. Okay, you're all right.
I know what I'm doing with it. I have the show at 7 o'clock. I better know what I'm...
Yes.
He lived to see Cuba and America back on diplomatic relations. If you live long enough, anything will happen.
Right, and he lived for that because he is a socialist and he is
an anarchist. He's an
anarchist.
An
okay.
anarchist.
All right, great, even better.
The communists wouldn't have him.
And who would? No, they wouldn't. The communists are way too uptight for Professor Corey. They're way too uptight for that, right? And Professor Corey was, but he's aside from labels and all that nonsense, he's a humanitarian, a lover of the people, and a great advocate.
Yeah, he funded the Rosenberg retrial for more than anybody else.
Oh, for you mean
the committee to revisit the Rosenbergs, and Aaron Katz was the head of.
To reopen the case.
Yes.
And you know, it's interesting that Roy Cohn, the sleazy.
Irwin said you could recognize him by smell.
You can recognize him by smell, Roy Cohn, right? And you know, Roy Cohn has so many wannabes today. Just go to Breitbart.com, the Breitbart News, right-wing news agency, and you'll see one after another. They all seem to be working for Donald Trump. The Roy Cohn wannabes.
What is I'm not familiar with the relationship, Breitbart and Roy Cohn.
Oh, Breitbart is, well, no, it's similar to right-wing extremist using vicious personal attacks.
But Roy Cohn had, he managed not to pay any tax until he got AIDS. And then...
well, Roger Ailes managed to get $40 million reward.
I thought it was 60.
I heard he got 40 and then 20 went to Gretchen Carlson.
Who's that?
The woman he was harassing. One of the women he was harassing.
Who?
Well, Roger Ailes was harassing all the women at Fox News.
No, I don't know about this either.
Oh yeah, today it was in the news. He got $40 million for his troubles. I mean, I've never heard of somebody
who was a
sexual harasser. What?
He was a dear friend. I wouldn't have put. I don't believe he could have harassed anybody.
Roger Ailes.
Yes.
He's a dear friend of yours.
From the past. Not. I haven't seen him in 20 years, but it was from the past.
What was he like 20 years ago?
Passive.
Passive,
brilliant, very engaging, very polite, very accommodating, very.
You think he was
brilliant.
set up?
No, I have no knowledge whatsoever, one way or another. But it's the last person. It happened in the courts. It happened in the courts that people were with child porn that you would never have any knowledge or anything of,
it's like one of those situations. You're an attorney. You've worked as a judge actually as well, right?
Yes.
And the person when the police go and the media interviews the neighbors of somebody who's arrested for heinous crime, they always say, not him.
Well, some you could tell. Some you could tell. Like Roy Cohn, you could tell. And he did a lot of good things, Roy Cohn. He did a lot of good things. I can't mention any, but I'm sure he did a few good things.
He's known for putting an innocent woman, Ethel Rosenberg, to death when he knew that she was innocent.
Well, the lack of due process is the key. Innocence, guilt come after due process. First you get due process.
Right.
There was no due process. And Kaufman was a brilliant judge afterwards on environment, on New York state law, and everything. Right. And his whole career was tainted by the collusion of the Rosenberg case. I mean, every lawyer's division has gone and explored that case and said it should have been retried because of the lack of due process.
Do you think we're going to see more of these kind of cases if Donald Trump is elected or if Hillary Clinton is elected?
I don't think it has much bearing of those two. You have the polar extremes. This is like a Marvel Comics adventure with those two running against each other. I wait for the debates on this. The Age of Ultron. I don't know what's afoot here.
Right. But so you think, what is this a symbol of, as far as the U.S. presidential politics? What does this election mean to you? What do you think? Were you surprised by the rise of Donald Trump, the sudden rise of this guy? I mean, you said you shook his hands and his hands weren't particularly big.
He's an amazing fellow. He was always polite. I found him, and he was always pleasant. But his hands were nothing. So I remember Bill Clinton's hand was a huge sponge, and I remember shaking Hillary's hand. It was kind of cold, but they all offered their hands, and none stood out as being something astounding. But they were all friendly hands, and no one is as much with the use of the thumbs and thumbs up as Trump, except Nixon. Nixon was always putting the thumbs up.
The thumbs up symbol, right? Everything's okay. Things are going to be great with me, right?
And the amazing thing with Nixon is that it was most pronounced when he was leaving the White House. When he had resigned the White House, and you had the thumbs up signal, like you have to be in the valley to rise to the mountain, and he was in the valley and he was leaving the White, and then came the thumbs up.
Right, but can you compare Donald Trump to Richard Nixon?
No, I'm saying, I'm just saying, look, if you're talking about hand gestures, and if you ever saw the show Lie to Me with Tim Roth, and he said body gestures and facial gestures. If you're in the courts of law, you know that everything betrays something or other, or signifies something or other. And they always commented on this gesture with Nixon that he was, inscrutable, because you couldn't put the thumbs up gesture together with the events at the time. It just made no sense. But so no matter what is happening in the Trump campaign, those thumbs up are coming. You know they're coming. With Hillary, nothing is coming. No matter what is going on with Hillary's campaign, there is no sign, no signal, no talking to the press, no communication of any kind.
She doesn't like to talk to the people. She doesn't seem to like people.
Well, she's learned her lesson, apparently, and she's keeping quiet.
Right. Trump, I have to say that with all of Trump's, with the horrific things he says on a personal level, people seem to say the same thing about him, that he's a good campaigner. And maybe that's the secret.
Well, he's open. He says she hasn't. What the news said that Hillary hasn't talked the press conference in 270 days or something, 274 days. And Trump says, "How is this fair?" He is challenged everywhere he goes and everywhere he doesn't go.
Do you think Donald Trump can win?
Yes, of course he can win. He could, if he beat 16 challengers of governors and senators and every possible rank and title and fiefdom and accolade, and he came from a late announcement to do it, and on his own money, and with no political background. And as far as I could tell, it wasn't rigged, and there was no one taking a dive. And he did it as a fantastic entertainer. I mean, this was Don Rickles and Jackie Mason rolled into one, and he just sailed.
When he was pulling up his pants, and
I missed that one.
Oh, I couldn't believe it. He was like, when the whole thing came out about his hands, he was like, he starts like pulling up his pants.
That was a no problem there episode.
Yeah, right. It was unbelievable. And then I was sitting at Arise News commentating on it, and they showed it, and they go to me, "Why do you think there's so much interest in Donald Trump?" And I said, "You just showed him pulling up his pants."
Brilliant. I mean, he's.
Why don't you tell me? You know,
I've always found him.
We do love him, right?
I'd always found him entertaining. You need an entertaining president. I mean, you got to admit it's not fair when the president of the United States goes to China for the G20 conferences just took place, and everybody gets a red carpet that we invented in America except our president, and they say it's a miscommunication.
And they say it's because he didn't go into Syria. That's what they're saying, because he did not, when he said he promised he would go into Syria, and in the end he did not bomb Syria.
That's why China wouldn't give a red cup. Sure.
That was a sign of weakness, and they wouldn't respect him. That China liked Nixon, and they many times it's been said to me by people close to China, the Chinese government, that why don't you like Nixon? He was the greatest president you ever had.
Well, take it from China.
Yes, a country that puts people into prison and executes 300 people.
The Falun Gong and everything else there, Manchuria,
so that's what
occupied Manchuria, destroyed Tibet.
But I see a lot of the people who sometimes, I've had people on the show on the left who support, I call it anarchists for Trump, who want to see, who dislike Hillary Clinton because of certain political positions she's taken, and see Trump as a person who could work with Putin and would not pressure Putin about Crimea or Ukraine, and would take Russia's side instead of fighting Russia the way.
Well, how can they talk about Putin like that? We had George W. Bush, and Russia took over Georgia. Mm-hmm. When everybody was saying Israel should go and take out the nukes in Iran, what happened was Russia stormed into Georgia and took over Georgia, and everybody's attention was Blasé. And if you had George W. Bush in office,
yeah.
and President Obama was elected, and he did nothing about that, how could you expect that you know, Trump is going to do anything different?
Don't you think that at least 8 years ago, the United States was war, we were tired of war, and then maybe after 8 years they've forgotten how horrible war was, and now they're ready for another
No, I don't think.
roll in the hay?
No, they're not ready for no roll in the hay. They're rolling up. Look at what happened with the Philippines.
So you don't think Trump, that's why Trump is more in isolationism. But okay, let's talk about...
No, look at the Philippines. This is amazing. Here's the new head of the Philippines.
Oh, yes.
I don't know his name. I can't put. I don't remember.
Right. The guy who called the president of the United States the son of a whore.
Right. That's in Korean.
Yeah.
He said we're going to get rid of these drug dealers. 2,500 people have been murdered.
And their children. It's basically baby killing children.
And everybody's up in arms. I don't know what the president said.
Who are the drug dealers? They're children. And teenagers.
And I never even heard of a comment from President Obama, and he says, no, son of a whore is going to tell me. Right. And this is right before they're supposed to meet in Laos, and the meeting is called off. Yeah. And everybody seems to be taking pot shots at President Obama, who just recognized Cuba. You know, I mean, of all...
Because he's not being tough. He's not like George W. Bush was a jerk, but internationally he knew how to bomb a city into submission, and that's what people respect.
Don't you think it's tough to have recognized Cuba? Don't you think that was a tough action to have to do?
Well, people are going there right now, and considering how unpopular among certain voting blocs that is in the United States.
Yeah, that was.
Well, tell me about Trump, because you're not really laying into Trump the thought because the reason being is that the guy is saying things that are so reminiscent of Adolf Hitler's rise to power. And
no, there is no comparison to Adolf Hitler. It's an obscene comparison. Adolf Hitler cannot be compared to anyone. Adolf Hitler.
No, I said comparisons to his rise to power, not a comparison to him.
There is nothing to compare. Adolf Hitler rose to power on the law. He tried a push in German. He tried, not a push, but a putsch. He tried...
The beer hall putsch.
Yes, a military coup, so to speak, and taking over Bavaria, Munich, and failed, and went to jail. And this is the best example of how being your own lawyer can be very effective. He was his own lawyer, and he converted the judge.
But he did have a fool for a client.
Well, not necessarily. Okay. He was always sane, and he made himself so popular in representing himself that the judge gave him the minimum sentence. He wrote Mein Kampf, and he came out more popular than when he had started the putsch.
Well, this seems certain. I mean, the way that Donald Trump is stirring up people by challenging the basic precepts of political correctness, which means basically in this world, in this time, being a racist publicly and openly and saying who the hell cares.
But I wouldn't compare it to Adolf Hitler, because Adolf Hitler said, in Germany, I can only come to power through the law. That was his malevolence, that he was able, with thugs behind the scene, with beatings and with intimidation, and then the death of the chancellor. Yeah. He was able to maneuver to get to the point where he assimilated all officers into him. There's no comparison to Trump. There's no possibility of that in America.
Well, how about 11 million, deporting 11 million allegedly illegal Mexicans, I mean illegal aliens like they were from outer space, when 1/3 of the United States is formerly Mexico, when 90% of all the vegetables and fruit picked that we eat all summer, all winter long come from California, picked by Mexican immigrants and workers. That's 70% of the construction workers in California are Mexican. That 50% of the teachers are Mexican. Not all illegal, obviously, but we're going to attack this population of people in the United States that make up such a large part of the United States and are so important to the economy of the United States. What are we going to do?
Well, that's
what kind of crazy thing is that? And we're going to triple, quadruple the police force and go after people and drag them out of their homes and places of work and schools and put them in boats and camps and send them.
I'll ask you a more basic question. If a wall could be the answer, if a wall could be the solution, is it so impossible to conceive that we would never have built that wall before? If this was a major problem and this was the major solution, Donald Trump has said that he is the only one that can fix half the problems. Is it therefore a reality in America that we knew this was the problem, we knew this was a solution, but we just couldn't get it done until the right person came? Or is it, as you said, that in reality the powers that be want the Mexican worker and like to oppress the Mexican worker, and even with the residuals of the gangs and the drugs and whatever else, most of the Mexican workers are law-abiding, hard-working people that are needed.
They buy something, I don't know, it's 30-40% of all the Fords and Toyotas in California, which is the largest market in the entire country, are bought by Mexican people. If you kicked out every Mexican who is not and think about all the people who are married, who have children, who love ones, people who respect and take care of children, you'd be ripping asunder families, Anglo and Mexican both, and you'd be destroying the economy of Japan, which creates one of the largest markets, Mexican people buying Toyotas and other Japanese vehicles.
But is Trump standing pat on this? I don't think so. He's backed off on the thing about rape from Mexico.
Right, but wasn't he like?
And by the way, he won his settlement on the station. I forget what had to do with a beauty contest, but they withdrew from having Trump.
Right. Oh yeah,
and he won that settlement.
Right.
He's the guy wins, and but he withdrew from his statement on rape, which I thought unnecessary. But his major issue, which I think makes a lot more sense, is terrorism. His major issue is radical Islamic terrorism and how we have to protect ourselves, not from Mexicans, but we have to protect ourselves from the terrorism that is the scourge of Europe and the scourge of the Middle East. And we have to have proper vetting. I
just walked through the 14th Street subway station at 8th Avenue, and we've all seen it now, half a dozen heavily armed, I wouldn't say they're police, soldiers, walking through, I don't know if I feel any safer that I see guys with machine guns walking through. I don't see how that's going to protect me.
Where are their machine guns?
They were walking through the 14th Street subway station, a whole line.
Why
just
there?
A half an hour ago. I don't know. And like at least a dozen, heavily armed men in full military gear, holding machine guns, were just strolling in a line through the subway station.
Well, I have to balance. I don't know where I'm going.
We're going to have more.
I have to balance where I'm told that candidate Clinton, or Secretary of State, who should know about foreign policy, wants to increase umpteenth time the amount of Syrian refugees to come into this country, vetted or not, versus, which candidate Clinton is not, somebody who's for fracking and who is not.
So you don't like
for
either
the environment.
candidate?
Not for the environment.
You're an environmentalist. We know that. You love the environment. You oppose fracking that causes earthquakes.
And poison, and fires, and deaths.
Right. There's plenty of, if you go on Netflix, if you watch Gasland, great movie.
A heroic venture.
Right. Excellent movie. Tells you a lot about it. The big problems. They have the 40-plus inch high-pressure gas main going within a couple of 100 feet of Indian Point. Able to...
Poor Indian Point,
Yeah, we'll talk about Indian Point as well. But the point being is that, Trump being a business guy doesn't really seem to give much consideration to the environment.
Not just him, but the entire construction industry. I haven't seen where the construction industry, what all the other good it does, I haven't seen them holding out banners against pollution and fracking and poison.
Well, they're building it, right? So, but on the other hand, you have Hillary Clinton, who you say has a weak, which I don't really see, but you're saying a weak a position towards allowing refugees from the Middle East to, you seem to think, correct me if I'm wrong, might harbor in their midst of all these poor, struggling people who just want to come yearning to be free in America, that somehow amongst them will be scattered some terrorists.
Well, wait, that's a proven fact.
Well, there was anarchists who were scattered among the Italian immigrants.
Well, we live in a new age. This is a new way. We have never experienced.
Left and right.
We have
rallying and anarchists are blowing up things left and right.
They were maligned.
Even that was a lie, because it turned out Sacco and Vanzetti were innocent.
The most innocent people there ever were, poets and scholars. A vendetta against the towns. Also in Florida, they were lynched for no reason there either. And the Jews were kept out from all kinds of slanders and lies and faced the Holocaust because of it. Greeks and Irish and so on and so forth. It faced everybody. Right. But in this case, it's a very different scenario, because in this case, they exist. And in this case, from Fort Hood to 9/11, we have seen the results. And we see the results not only from refugees, but from homegrown. And we have to stop it once and for all. And on this, Trump is 100% right.
You know, Shannon, you and I agree on a lot of things, but I have to disagree there with you, because I think that you said it yourself. The threat in the United States has always been homegrown terrorism. We have never really faced any problem. We're not France. I mean, France is a different situation than the United States. France absorbed Algeria and Libya and other countries into its city. They considered their empire to be actually part of France, so that what happened in Algeria and what happened in Paris were linked together. And both during the Algerian War in the 1960s, the city dump of Paris was filled every day with hundreds of people murdered, okay? There was murder going on. The French secret police were murdering people, and there's a tremendous bitterness towards the colonial. So, you know, France and the Middle East and the Arab world.
So why take it out on the Jews?
Hate each other. Hate each other for a long time. Have battles for a long time.
But they take it out on the Jews and the Christians, who have nothing to do with this.
The United States never had this problem until now.
Yes.
We never had this problem. I traveled in the 1990s. I traveled in Egypt. I traveled the Middle East, everywhere. I never had a problem. People respected me, and now I'm told you can't say you're an American.
And also,
what have we done?
Also Germany. Also Germany.
While at the same time, we have a rising fascist right-wing, and we're coming to an end here last minute, right-wing domestic terrorist movement in the United States.
We always did.
Always did, and it's growing larger and larger, and it's people like David Duke, a Nazi, a straight-up fascist Nazi, who's coming out there and supporting Donald Trump.
Well, I also, there are people supporting.
No friend of the Jews.
No, never was. And Bernie Sanders is no friend of the Jews, and he's supporting Hillary Clinton. You know, we have unfortunately.
We had 20 seconds. Who do you want to see as president? If you had your druthers, the best candidate for president who's not running.
The best candidate, not right. I have no one right now.
No one.
I'm hoping that Trump becomes an environmentalist and Hillary is opposed to terrorism in a meaningful way. I'm hoping that takes place in the next, and then I have two choices. But I always hope for the best, you know, because I'm not opposed to either one right now.
All right, Shannon Taylor, thanks for joining me and Let Him Talk. And we had a great show, love the conversations, and we'll see you next week. We have a great show next week. All right, Teresa Burns here on Let Them Talk. See you next week.
Thank you, Paul.